Pritam, we start. Pritam,
Yes. So we start now.
yes, please.
Hello, everyone. I am Pritam. I am a PhD candidate at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem and a visiting researcher at Tulane University in New Orleans, USA, and a member of the Breakthrough Science Society Abroad chapter. On behalf of the Breakthrough Science Society Abroad chapter, I welcome all of you to the webinar, A Scientific Testing of Vedic Astrology by Dr. Nagesh Rajopadhye. Before we start, let me say a few words about the Breakthrough Science Society. The science organization Breakthrough Science Society was established in 1995 as a platform to create a new science movement in the country, and currently has chapters in almost all Indian states and an abroad chapter. The objective of BSS, Breakthrough Science Society, are including but not limited to cultivating scientific and logical faculty of mind, fostering consciousness against unscientific beliefs, superstition, fanaticism, communalism, and casteism, disseminating and popularizing different discoveries and advances of science, cultivating the study of history and philosophy of science, to conduct campaigns for the introduction of secular, scientific, and democratic education policy, and to fight against the misuse of science for destruction of humanity. Today is the 425th martyrdom day of Giordano Bruno. On 17th February 1600, he was burned alive for opposing the superstitious religious beliefs of the geocentric model of our solar system and propagating the scientific idea of heliocentric model proposed by Copernicus, where the sun is at the center of the solar system. Due to great people like Copernicus, Bruno, Galileo, Newton, and many such, modern science has developed, and today we have a scientific understanding of most astrophysical phenomena. Unfortunately, in India, age-old pseudoscientific and superstitious practices like astrology are still prevalent. Astrology is rooted in Vedic traditions and holds significant influence within the Indian society, with many consulting astrologers for major life decisions. Despite its popularity, astrology is widely rejected by the scientific community for lacking empirical evidence. Pseudoscientific beliefs still persist, though, intertwined with cultural and religious practices. Traditional customs like matching horoscopes for marriage showcase the enduring influence of astrology in our society. While there is a growing awareness of the need for scientific literacy and temperament, the historical and cultural ties to these pseudoscientific beliefs pose challenges in the modern world. Today's webinar answers how Vedic astrology would fare when subjected to rigorous scientific testing, which today's speaker has done, and published his findings in peer-reviewed journals of international repute. We are delighted to have him share his findings with us today. With that said, I would like to introduce you to today's speaker, Dr. Nagesh Rajopadhye. Dr. Rajopadhye has done his PhD in solid state physics from the University of Pune. He started his career as a senior scientist in the Indian Space Research Organization and then moved to the IT industry, Accenture, where he worked till his retirement. As a part of his post-retirement activity, he devoted his time to experimentation with empirical testing of Vedic astrology, as he has always been concerned about the huge impact of astrology on Indian society. This program will be live streamed on YouTube, so I request the audience to kindly write your questions there or in the Zoom chat box. We will take the questions at the end. With this, I now request Dr. Rajopadhye to start the webinar. Over to you, Dr. Rajopadhye.
Dr. Rajopadhye, you have to unmute yourself, please.
Yeah. So thanks for the invite and thanks for the participation. Uh, I will talk about the empirical testing of the astrology. I'll just share my screen and then we start. So we'll start with my introduction and I'll not go through all the points since uh, he has already introduced me. So did PhD in physics from Pune, joined ISRO just to start the career as a senior scientist, and then moved to IT industry. Spent couple of years, in fact, the last 17 years I spent in Accenture, and retired as an associate director. And this particular topic, the astrology and the truth of astrology was very close to my heart. So I, in fact, decided to retire 2 years earlier than the stipulated time. Uh, and in my introduction, you can see the last point, studying astrology for the last 20 years. So I think, like many of us, we come across some incidences in the life, and then we feel like going to astrologer, and or maybe out of curiosity we go there. So same thing happened with me some 20 years back. Uh, my son, he was around 2 to 3 years, and we just went to someone. He gave some prediction, something like, he has a short life or something. And you can imagine, the parents, with a small child, and somebody is telling that he has a short life, what kind of shock we will have. And same thing happened to us. We started going from one astrologer to other. And then finally I decided that we should study it ourselves, and that's why I started studying myself. Got interested into it. The very nature of the astrology is something that makes you very much interested in. And it happened so that for the first few years, because there is a learning curve for any science, for us to absorb we need some time. So for the first few years, I started believing on it. It's the same mechanism which happens with most of us. So I started believing it on it, and then whenever there was a debate, I think we have these debates in the families. I used to be always fighting from the astrology side, but then every time the debate will come to the standstill position it and say that, okay, we need some evidence, we need some black and white evidence. And that's where I thought, can I create that evidence for the astrology? Mind you that I was in favor of astrology at that time. So I started collecting the data, and I had already learned it to the extent that I was able to see the charts and advise people and all that. But then I started realizing that there is somewhere some mistakes. There are the rules are not very consistent, and that's where I started doing this empirical testing as a pilot experiment to initially start with. And then it went to a very full-fledged computerized kind of a testing, which I'm going to talk just now. So that's a brief background of how I came into this business of testing the astrology. uh, Secondly, you know I think before we go further, I think he has already highlighted, but each of us will agree, the kind of huge impact this astrology has on our society. And that was another reason for me to take the early retirement, at least 2 years before the date, and spend some quality time on this topic. Because today, if you look at, without any scientific verification of the astrology, 75% of arranged marriages in India, they happen only after matching the kundlis, whether people believe it or they are out of fear or whatever. But again, without scientific verification, this has been going from generations to generation. And I will excuse the earlier generations because at that time the computer was not there and so on. But for the last 50 years, we have internet, we have computer, but still without any verification, this is going on. Our survey says that at least there are 30 to 40% people who firmly believe astrology. So they will take each an important decision of their life based on astrology, again without verification. Those who don't believe, they will also follow the suit and maybe out of fear. If you talk in terms of money, again, the huge money involved, hundreds of crores of industries, this because of the gems, pujas, shanti, and all kind of stuff. uh, People, who are ordinary people, middle class people, they can't afford. But still, just because somebody says you have this dosha in your kundali, he will go to Trambakeshwar or Ujjain and then spend 20,000 rupees, which he would have otherwise spent for his family. But that's what's happening in our society. It's a huge impact. Crores of people are getting impacted in terms of correct or incorrect marriages. Billions of rupees is involved, and millions of marriages are wrongly getting directed. So that's a huge impact, which made me to focus on this particular topic and thought that this must be concluded through some experimentation. So I did that, and I think this is where we began. So I'm just telling now the story of our research. It started, it's not, the first part does not belong to me. It belongs to some great people in India. Uh, Dr. Jayan Naralikar, you must have heard of, and Dr. Narendra Dabholkar. So they conducted a double blind test of astrology in 2008. Okay. At that time, social media was not there. So we probably may not be aware of. But in 2008, what they did, and this is a very simple experiment that anyone can understand. So what they did, they collected the charts of intelligently disabled children and intelligent children. So there is a vast difference between these two entities. They coded those charts. So they removed the details of which chart belongs to intelligent and so on. And then they coded the charts, and then they mixed all the charts randomly, just like we, mix the play cards. And then they made the sets of 40 charts. And they appealed to astrologers to come forward, take the set, and whatever rules they may have, based on those rules, the astrologer should tell which chart belongs to intelligently disabled child or intelligent child. I think it's a very fair kind of test, I would say. And this is like, tossing a coin. So even if I don't know anything of astrology, I will be accurate to the extent of 50%. So the criteria was kept as 70%. So even if you can accurately tell 70% of the charts of your set correctly, we will agree that astrology is true. I don't need to tell that, none of the astrologers could succeed in this double blind test. And this is not only in India, but all over the world. There are hundreds of such double blind tests conducted, and none of the astrologer has really succeeded. In fact, in India, there are rewards of millions of rupees if somebody can really prove astrology, but no one has claimed it yet. That itself answers, the truth. So going on the experiment back, so even the Astrologers Association was there, which was also given some 200 charts, and they also could not succeed beyond 50%. So that's where it started, and Dr. Naralikar has published his paper in this Skeptical Inquirer. But those who want to believe in astrology at any cost, what they will say, and that they said that those astrologers who participated in that test were not capable of predicting correctly. And that's why there is an importance to the empirical testing of astrology. So we decided, okay, we will test the astrology itself, and that's where this empirical testing was planned for. I'll just tell you the experiment in very brief, and you will have to be slightly analytical. So if you ask me one reason why astrology has survived for so long, one of the major reason is people are lazy in becoming analytical. Okay, so we have to be slightly straining our brain and slightly being analytical. I hope this is a research community, so this should not be difficult. But my challenge is to present this stuff outside, because none of the person wants to be very analytical, in understanding what this is all about. So the software is of course required, because we have to test it through computer and hundreds and thousands of data points and so on. So this has four modules. First is data, of date of birth, time, and so on. Then there is a software which creates the chart as per the Vedic astrology. Then there is an analytical engine. This is our digital astrologer, which I'll talk a bit later, which will analyze the charts, and then whatever outcomes it has, there will be a statistical testing package which will tell us, whether there is a significant difference or not. So we'll talk about this a bit later, but before that, I think we should do a 2 minutes of crash course on astrology, and just 2 minutes, not more than that. And we will see at a very high level. And this is required, because unless you understand this, you will not be able to make out the crux of the experiment. So I think let's see how the predictions are made. And I assure you, not more than 2 minutes and very simple. So, how the predictions are made, on the left hand side, you will see the chart, which I hope everybody has seen at once, at least in the life. So, you will have, the planets. I think each of us know the planets: Venus, Sun, Mercury, and so on. Then there are houses. If you can see this, this is a first house, this is a second house, this is a third house, and so on. So, there are 12 houses. Third entity which is important is Rashi, is the sign, zodiac signs. For example, this number represents the Rashi. The eighth number is Scorpio, and so on. So you all have seen, the zodiac signs. So that is the third thing. There is a fourth entity called Bhavesh, or some people call it as a lord of the house. We will not go into the details, because we want to do this at a very high level, but these four are important. Now, how are they important? Let's look at that. So each of our life, has got various aspects, and we are always curious about that. One of the aspect which is important is of course the marriage. The second could be our intelligence, and in this experiment the intelligence was tested, so we'll talk more about that. Then we have other things like health, wealth, or all the aspects of the life, and we are always curious. So astrology says that for each of the aspect of the life, there are some planets which are primarily responsible for that aspect. So if you want to go to astrologer and want to find out about your marriage, he will first see the Venus or the moon, because they are considered as primarily responsible for the marriage. Now, I know, if there are some astrologers in the audience, they will jump on me saying, no, no, this is not only two, but there are more. And we know that, there are many more planets which somehow get involved, and we have tested each and every planet. So not to worry about that, but to make it simpler, let's understand these two are primarily responsible. In terms of houses, there are two houses which they say are responsible, which is the first house and seventh house. Now, when I say they are responsible, so if I have to make prediction about your marriage, what I am going to do is I will check the Venus and Moon in the chart, and what I am going to check, I'm going to check whether there are any malefic configurations associated with these planets. I'm going to check whether there are any malefic configurations associated with these houses, and based on that, I will give you the prediction. It is as simple as that. Now, how do they decide whether the configurations are malefic or not? So for that, there are some rules. For example, if Saturn and Mars are their enemies, they will always consider as the malefic planets. So if Venus or Moon has got a conjugation with those evil planets, then they will say that okay, Venus, then your marriage will not stand. You will have divorce, and so those kind of predictions they will give. So if the Venus and the Moon for the marriage, because they are responsible for marriage, if they have any malefic configuration, the prediction will be bad. If they have any good configuration, like conjugation with the Jupiter and some others, then they will say good prediction. Same way goes with houses. If there are evil planets like Saturn, Mars present in your seventh house, they will say gone. Your marriage is gone, and all kind of stuff. So same goes with the Lord of House and so on. I think we have understood the crux of it. This is how the predictions are made. If you go to them for intelligence, for example, the experiment that we have, they will check your Mercury and Moon. They assume that Buddha is Buddhi. So they will check how is your Mercury. If it is having good configuration, they will say you have good intelligence. If it is associated with some Saturn, Mars, Rahu, Ketu, then they will say no, not good intelligence. And not only Mercury, but then they'll say okay, Moon is also responsible for the brain and so on. I think we are done with our crash course on the astrology. So let's move further. Now, how do we test it? This was important, for you to understand. That's why. So what we have done is like we have made a digital astrologer. What it does, so it takes the chart, and of course this everything is computerized. So it takes the chart and it captures various parameters as per the astrology, and there are some 3850 parameters which are captured. So what is captured? Whether they will check for each planet, is it debilitated, is it ucha nicha, whatever they have, sitting in friend's house or enemy's house, whatever rules they have, whatever conventions they have, based on that it will capture all those things for each chart. And I know there are so many things. For example, if you take conjugation of two planets, and we have so many planets, so it becomes like 12 into 12, 144 data points for the computer. Whether there is a Venus and Saturn configuration, Venus and Mars configuration, so on. So once it captures the 3840 parameters of the chart, then it moves to the next step, applying rules. Now, this is very important. Applying rules to the chart. I think you all have gone to the astrologers sometime, or you must have seen people going there. What will they do? They will hold your chart in their hand and will start reading it in their own style and commentary. Oh, so if you have gone for marriage, they say, oh, your Saturn is sitting in the seventh house, gone. Marriage will be late. This is the rule. Saturn sitting in seventh house, which is responsible for the marriage, will delay your marriage. This is the rule. And this rule is exactly what we have put into computer. Now, of course, there are many such rules, and we have taken the most fundamental rules of astrology for testing. There are plenty of rules that we have taken. Uh, we consulted a lot of astrologers, referred to books, and whatever was the common factor that everyone agrees to. And the most important rules, as soon as you go to the astrologer, what they are going to see, one, two, three, four, five, those fundamental rules we have taken and we have put into computer. So computer will apply those rules and will tell us yes or no, whether that rule gets complied or not. Now let's see how does this whole thing work. So we have made two sets of astrological charts. One set was of mentally disabled, intelligently disabled, and the second, on the left hand side, we have intelligently disabled charts. And we took some 338 or 400 charts, and on the right hand side we have charts of very intelligent people. So you can imagine there is a substantial difference between these two kinds of people. And if astrology is true, there should be a substantial difference between their charts in terms of those rules, which they are saying that are responsible for, say, having a less intelligent. Now, what kind of rules are there? Again, we will just take one for example, and I'm trying to take a very simple so that you all can understand. Let's take one simple rule that because they say Buddha is Buddhi, that means Mercury is responsible for the intelligence. If it has a conjugation with evil planets like say Saturn or Mars, your outcome is bad. That means you will have less intelligence. So ideally, you will agree that this rule, if it is true, it should get fulfilled in the left hand side set, those charts of mentally disabled children. So let's assume that out of 338, I get a 280 charts saying that those charts are fulfilling that rule. Okay. So I have just created a hypothetical scenario if astrology is true. My expectation is that if this rule is true, then on the right hand side, in the set of intelligent people, ideally this rule should never get fulfilled. So it should be zero. But let's give some mileage, some percentage. So I will imagine something like, 6%, 7%, 15%, 20%. Fine. So there should be a difference of 80% to 20%. If that kind of substantial difference is there, then I will say yes, astrology is true. This rule is also true. And when if you see equal percentage on both sides, that means this rule has no meaning. This is not a valid rule. And this is exactly what was done by the computer. The statistical testing was basically used for deciding whether there is a significant difference or not. And we gave a lot of advantage to the astrologers. We say even if there is more than 10% difference, that means let's say if this is 82%, even if we find 70% there, see 70% against our expectation of 0%, even then we said we will agree to the astrology. But guys, unfortunately or fortunately, uh, we will show the results. Okay, these are very interesting results. So what we find, let's say rule 2, let's focus on rule 2, which we already discussed, that Mercury, and let's look at the row of the Mercury here. The Mercury having conjugation with evil planets. As I mentioned, it should have always been more percentage in those charts which are of intelligently disabled people. But what we are finding is that they were occurring with equal frequency in both the sets. That means that rule has no validity. Okay, so let's talk about Mercury. Now, people will say, no, 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 Mercury is not the only planet. You should have seen Moon, guy. Okay, we have seen Moon also, and we found no significant difference. And I knew that, somebody will say again, you should have seen Jupiter. So we saw Jupiter also. Likewise, we did not want to leave any stone unturned, and that's why we saw all the planets. Because we have computer, we have digital astrologer, and the rule 2 was tested. Likewise, we took all those rules. There is another rule says that if your planet is sitting in the sixth, eighth, or 12th house, then the outcome is bad. Okay, we tested that. We found equal percentages. There is a rule saying that if it is in a deliberated sign or maybe a cruel nakshatra, whatever rules, I knew that because I have been astrologer for some time, so I knew what people are checking when they predict it. So we checked all the rules for all the planets. We have not left any scope for anyone to argue, ideally. This is what we did for the planets, and same thing was done for the houses. Houses also, there are rules saying that, okay, if you have Saturn, Mars, Rahu, Ketu sitting in your house, whatever aspect that house is representing, for example, seventh house marriage, fifth house intelligence, and so on, that you will have a bad outcome. So we tested, in this case, we had to test it for fifth house. We tested it. And I knew that there will be astrologers who will claim, no, no, you should have seen first, second, third, fourth. So we tested all 12 houses. We did not find any significant difference in them. And same way we went to the Lord of the house and so on. And then we did many things. This is not all what we did. This is just part one of what we did. Part two, I will not really go into the details because we have less time. And secondly, it is a bit difficult to understand also. So I don't want to make this lecture very boring because it requires too much of going into the details. But at the high level, I can tell you that I know because I have been astrologer at some time. It's not only one rule, based on that they will give the prediction. It's a set of rules. So, for example, if I have to give the prediction for the marriage, I will see number of rules, and those number of rules may be something like 10. Let's say 10 rules are there, which they will consider. Now, out of that 10 rules, they will see, how many of rules are getting, how many of such bad configurations are there in your chart. And let's say they have their experience, and based on that they say that, okay, if uh, the configurations are more than 6, then you will have bad prediction, and so on. So we knew that this system also needs to be tested, and that's why we put our own scoring system, and we did systematically. I will not go into the details. As I mentioned, there are published papers, and you can go through those papers, and we saw that even not only the individual rules, but even with the combination of rules, astrology is not valid, because we tested that here, and we found that it has just no meaning. We just not we did not stop there. I knew there are a lot of slides and data, and as I mentioned, I will not really go through the details, because I want to give some time to the discussions also. So we saw all the planets, houses, lots of houses, individual rules, combination of rules. There are some principles which say no, no, ascendant is important. So we saw the ascendants, positivity of each planet, negativity of each planet. We saw that, like there are rules for becoming intelligently disabled, there are also rules for becoming intelligent. Positive rule, let's call them positive rule. So even we saw that, again, series of rules, series of such experiments, all those things we did. Then they say, no, no, you have to also see how many auspicious planets are there in your four, number one, four, is 6, and all those kind of 1, 4, 8, and 1, 4, 1, 4, 7, and 9. Oh, sorry, 10. So how many such auspicious planets are there? So we even checked that. On none of the parameter we could see any significant difference between the two opposite sets of the charts. And this is important because we are checking on the statistical level. If this rule is true, if this science is true, then it should show consistently, statistically, repeatedly, what they are saying, and we did not find any evidence for that. So again, I'll not go into the details of what all we saw. The list is really unending, that's why we were working on this software for almost like 3 to 4 years, and testing and checking and all that before actually conducting the experiment. And this is the most rigorous exercise that we had to do. Now people will say, okay, man, you tested this astrology with some intelligently disabled and intelligent people, understood. But this is a science which is going on for thousands of years. How can you disprove that with just one experiment? So we did number of experiments, not only intelligent versus disabled, but we took cancer versus no cancer. You can imagine, and we specifically took charts of people who died early because of the cancer, so who have significant impact on their life. So, you know that the cancer probability goes up as you grow up. So if you have cancer after age of 60, somebody may argue that those people do not have any significant impact on their life, and that's why it did not reflect into their birth charts. Again, we did not want to leave any such scope, so we took necessarily those charts which where people had cancer in their earlier stage, against those people who never had it. uh, we did not find any significant difference in those charts on any of the hundreds of parameters and sets of rules and combinations and all that we have checked. There is absolutely no difference between those two sets. Uh, no married, never married versus long married life. And you can imagine, there has to be again, major difference between the life patterns. And I have seen, astrologers arguing that, those people may have affairs outside and all that. But again, if somebody has to be really logical, you can imagine that the person who never gets married in his life, he has a completely different pattern of the life. He's, he has no responsibilities, he's sometimes he feels lonely, he has no support. There are advantages, disadvantages both. And the other side also, there are pros and cons, but the patterns are very different. And if they are different, they must reflect into the charts, and they should have got caught into our testing. Nothing. uh, Celebrities versus ordinary people, there should be difference in the people's charts. People like Amitabh Bachchan and Ranveer Singh and those Bollywood stars, and people ordinary like us, there has to be difference because there is so much of difference in our lives. But we did not find any difference in any planet, house, lord of house, nothing, absolutely no difference in the charts when we statistically compare. And we had taken 700 charts of celebrities and some 700 charts of ordinary people, and there is a paper for that. So what I want to tell you in the short is, we made we have put enough efforts before saying that this is not a valid science. We have put enough efforts to say that this science has absolutely no meaning, so-called science. It has absolutely no meaning, and it should not have any place in our life. uh, so I think, we are almost like 40 minutes, we are already done. uh, Keeping scope for some discussions towards the end, I just would like to conclude saying that what are the next steps. So I have set up one website called astrologyyesorno.com, where I have put all this material, for people to read and go through. So it has got different levels. If somebody says, no, I don't want to be very analytical, I have put some simple version of what I want to say. If somebody is a researcher like you, he can go through the papers, and those things are also kept over there. Then I have set up, because my mission now is, I have stopped conducting any more experiments because there is no end to it. I think we should also make sure that it reaches to the masses. So for the last couple of years, I am only working on taking it to the people, and that's why I'm trying to put this information on Quora. There are some exclusive spaces I created in English, Hindi, Marathi, Quora. I'm answering some questions from the people, which are read by again thousands of people. Created some videos and kept it on YouTube. But these kind of topics, they don't get a lot of views and upvotes, because I mean, who wants to know the scientific stuff? People want entertainment after all on the YouTube. So it has its limitations. But we are trying our best, creating awareness, reaching out to those NGOs which are working for the, against the superstitions, and trying to help those activists, giving some training to those activists. This is what I'm doing. And of course, I'm offering free consultation to those who want to get married without checking the charts, because they need confidence. The I mean, I have seen the list of questions that you all have given while filling the registration form. And one of the interesting question was, what needs to be done to create the awareness in the society. I think the answer is difficult, because we have to do many things first of all, and to bring the change in the society, it will take number of years, and we have to be patient till that gets over. But we have to keep on working. So one of the initiative that I thought will be appropriate will be to, for those people who want the courage, who wants to take the decision against these conventions. uh, I do talk to them. People write to me, and they reach out to me. We have the calls, and I try to again give them confidence that this is absolutely not there. Every week, in fact, I talk to at least one couple who wants to get married, but their parents are not allowing them. Then I talk to their parents. I must be very honest, that the success ratio is very less, because parents being parents, they are always concerned about their child. I can understand their position, uh, but this is how our society is, that they will not think scientific. the biggest marketing strategy of the astrologers and the astrology is creating fear in the minds of the people. If you ask me why this pseudoscience has survived for so long, one of the reason is the fear factor and the scare. Many people are following astrology because they say we don't know how to taste the poison. I mean, this is what the parents tell me, that we don't want to taste the poison. You may be right, you must have done experiments and all that, but we don't want to test it for us. So that's kind of mindset we have. And I think I remember when I talked to Dr. Naralikar, who also guided me for this experiment, and I have acknowledged him in all the papers. So when I was talking to him, I asked him this question that, what should be done? Because we do this all experiments and all that, but people don't listen to this. People don't pay attention to it. And he gave me a very important hint. He says that advice. He said, talk to young people, talk to the youngsters. And I think that is the mantra. Because if you talk to students, for example, they are open minded. They have not made any firm belief, and they are ready to change their beliefs at that stage of the life. Secondly, by default, they are against their parents, the rebellion phase of the life. So it's easy for us to go and talk to them, you know and do the conversation, and they will probably understand this because they are open and tech savvy, and they will give importance to the scientific evidence. So that is another mantra that we don't I think we can. I mean, if you ask me, I have written off all those who are 30 plus. Honestly, I really don't go to anyone convincing him that astrology is true or false. I don't talk to, or I don't debate with those people because it's a waste of time. Rather, we can utilize that time for the youngsters, and that's where I focus on, and that's where I see a very good traction and very good results. Whoever I talk to in the younger age, they understand this whole crux of scientific evidence and all that, and they are ready to change their opinion. So that's the answer to what we need to do going forward to create the awareness in the society. uh, as far as you are concerned, I would say just make sure that you live astrology free life, relaxed and astrology free life. Spread the word wherever you can. You need not go to uh, you know go out of your home and go on any mission. Even within your own activities, daily activities, whenever you come across, try to spread the word. Try to convince them. Maybe you can refer to this experiment or whatever. I think there is one more thing that we all can do, and I'm just answering the question in advance. The same question, that what needs to be done to create the awareness in the society. There is a very powerful technique called double blind test. See, empirical testing and all that I did, I know this was required to be created at least once, because in the history it is not there. I have not come across. I have also been a PhD student, and my guide also advised me to do the literature survey before getting into the problem solving. So I did a lot of literature survey. I did not find any scientific evidence, neither on the side of astrology nor on the side of against the astrology, and that's the reason I put all these efforts. So, but it's difficult for people to understand empirical testing and all that. I think what they can understand is double blind test. Imagine that every 6 months the double blind test is happening, and mind you, this is the world of social media, so there will be a lot of ripples getting created in the society. So every 6 months there is a double blind test, and astrologers are failing month after month, year after year. That will be a very powerful message to the society, that why are they not able to predict correctly for those charts which are blinded. That's exactly what. And when this will get proven with the statistics, because one of incidents, you will always have some prediction which will match. By law of the probability, there will be something like that. So what is happening today, and this is a psychological effect, uh, we focus on something which matches and we ignore something which does not match. Now, this is called some Barnum effect or something in psychology. So there are some 22 psychological effects which play the role in astrology. Why people believe in astrology. So if you create another, so if you invite me for another lecture on psychology of astrology, probably we will talk about that. But these are the facts that there are some psychological rules or philosophies that are playing the role on why people believe in astrology. So we only focus on something that matches and we ignore something which does not match. So when people will see, that year after year none of them are able to prove pass through the double blind test, I think that will be a very powerful message to the society. uh, and with that, I would really come to the conclusion, saying that, before that, let me just give a small story. I think we have some 2 minutes. So what happened, this experiment was created, and I'm sure I'm just answering your questions in advance. So this experiment was created. This was done all over the world, in fact. That was, so what they did. They put some 200 people in the hall. They collected their birth dates and timings and all that, and they said, okay, based on your dates and timing, we have written down your personality, your nature. So this is your, so they gave paper to each one and they said, this is your description of your personality. Please let us know to what percentage it matches with you. 70% of the people said it matches with what you have written. My personality matches with what you have written. So hold on, don't jump on the conclusion. The part of the interesting part of the experiment was the paper which was given to all of them was same. There was no difference in the description, and the personality description was not given on the basis of date or time. So this is how our minds work, and that's why, those people who believe in astrology, they believe in astrology. I think with that note, and hoping to talk more, in the rest of the 10 minutes, I will conclude that, astrology, of course, is invalid. I'll control my language and say that it is just an invalid science. It has no meaning, and there is no place for us to, follow astrology in our life. Thank you very much. But I will, if you have any questions, I'll be most happy to answer them.
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Rajopadhye, for the interesting talk. We now proceed to the question answer session. Our participants on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube are requested to write their questions in the chat box. We shall take these questions as we proceed. To conduct the question and answer session, I shall invite Dr. Ankita Das and Shivi Saxena. Dr. Ankita is currently a postdoctoral research scholar at Glasgow and a member of Breakthrough Science Society Abroad chapter. And Shivi is currently a PhD student at Western Michigan University, USA. With this, I request Ankita and Shivi to take over. Thank you.
Thank you, Pritam. Thank you, Dr. Rajopadhye. It was such insightful and a very nice presentation of the topic. So I can see Komudi has raised his hand. Komudi, will you come forward and ask the question to our speaker?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Ankita. So my question is essentially when we see the phenomena of high tide and low tide, it's due to some effect from some astronomical bodies. So like astronomical bodies certainly have certain effects on like phenomena in Earth, but the thing is that these phenomena occur in a this phenomena spans in some large like space. So like we don't see like high tide and low tide happening like to nearby points. So is there any explanation in Vedic astrology as to why the effects of astronomical bodies can differ for two or more persons staying close by? That is my question.
No, actually, there is no explanation. I tell you, in fact, you raised the right point. Uh, so usually you will find them always talking round and round, and so as of today, I can tell you, there is no explanation, scientific explanation of the mechanism through which these predictions come true. So for example, if let's talk about the same example which I took, that Mercury, which is responsible for intelligence. Let's say at the time of the birth, that Mercury is very close to Saturn in the sky. How will that impact the brain of the child? That mechanism has never been explained by astrologers. That is one thing. Secondly, it is not only that, there they will create some kind of a story and will tell you that no, at that time of birth this happened, that happened. But again, imagine another situation, that at the time of birth, the Venus and Saturn were together in the sky in one, one angle, I would imagine. And that has an impact after 20 years when you are about to get married, and it creates an impact that you don't feel like getting married, and or you, even if you try to get married, you tend to get into divorce. Can you imagine, will there be any impact of such planets on our human life? I mean, I sometimes wonder, how come people believe on this? I mean, how it can never be explained, and thanks to astrologers, they have not tried to explain also. So they say that no, this we cannot explain, but it is there. And because there is a fear associated with it, there is a fear, which is the biggest factor why astrology has been successful. They will go on arguing. I mean, and there are so many stupid arguments. For example, this example that you gave very rightly, that moon has an impact on earth in terms of, okay, the tides of the sea and all that. But does it mean, in terms of astrology, moon is responsible for mother? Does it mean that because moon has an impact on the tides of the ocean, it will have impact on my mother's health? I mean, does this look logical statement? But they keep on doing such statements, and our society is not asking any question to astrologer. This is the biggest worry. I mean, talk about the astrological matching of the charts before getting married. We have been using it for generations and generations. Millions of marriages are taking place. Not a single person has asked to the astrologer what is the scientific evidence based on some at least 1,000 charts. When there are crores of marriages happening, take 1,000 charts and prove your whatever you want to say. Guna Milan Paddhati, what that scoring and all that, or they say Manglik effect. Prove that. We don't ask. We as a society, we have completely failed in asking question to the astrologer. See, when I do some experiments like this, I get lot of questions on my data. For example, people will ask, did you go to the hospital and check the birth time and date of the person? Of course not. But when the astrologers wrote hundreds and lakhs of books, and they wrote, thousands of rules, did they really go to the hospital and check the birth chart and timing? You don't ask to them. But when somebody tries to disprove that, you will ask hundreds of questions. By the way, I do have an answer, that all the data points that I've taken, they are from the Astro Data Bank, where they went to the hospital and checked the birth and timings and everything, and then only I have taken the data. But this is how our society behaves. This is our that's unfortunate situation that we are in. But I hope I answered the questions. Planets do not have any impact on our life. None of them are fortunately trying to explain that. Some stupid people will explain that with the example of moon, tide, and all that, but it has no meaning. They will go to the extent of saying that, okay, on a given time, your blood will be thinner and thicker, and but all that is just, talking in the air is very easy. Uh, Showing the evidence is what is difficult, and that has never been done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rajopadhye. Next question is an interesting one from Debanuj. Debanuj, are you around? So you can ask your question directly.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, my question was that the question basically is uh, the houses and grahas that you showed on the chart, does it depend only on the time of the birth? So if it depends only on the time of the birth, then using statistics, we can say that it's completely random, the allocation of houses and grahas. So that was my question.
So, I mean, as far as the so what I have disproved is what is being followed by astrology, and you know, so there are some mathematics and rules for that, and based on that. But to answer your question, they are constant. So you go from one astrologer to other astrologer, you will always have same uh, charts, and in this everything is mathematics. So what I did is I did not go into that mathematics. So I said whatever it is, you know, whether right, wrong, whatever, the final outcome is important. If the final outcome is not consistently getting proven, then it is all useless. You know, whatever they may be following, that's all useless. Many people talk about, you know, these the astrology comes from, you know, 10,000 years from here and from there. I said okay, fine, I don't question that, but today can you prove it is my question. And I tell you, the responsibility to prove whatever they say is actually on them. You know, that responsibility is actually on them, because they are earning money on that astrological charts and astrology. We are not earning money, but just that because it is creating a harm to the society, we have to step in and do all that. But otherwise it is their responsibility to prove the astrology, which has never been done. I think, so if you allow me, I will also, you know, because there were a couple of questions which were related to the astronomy part, which I will try to, you know, keep aside for the time being, because you can always get those answers on the chat GPT and Bard. But there was one interesting question also on, you know, the uh, some celebrities or some, you know, the scientists also following the astrology and all that. So the question was asked like how, whether this is correct or incorrect and all that. So I would imagine that for anyone, whether he is a scientist or whatever, if he follows what is, you know, what is his belief in his personal life, of course we have, I mean, we do have to say that it is incorrect, but you know, when it comes to the media part, we cannot object on it. But following such thing for the institutions is of course incorrect, because it is giving a wrong message to the society and to the children who are watching them, and they have the responsibility. But I would say, rather than scientists, it is also the media which is unfortunately responsible for this, because the media is, you know, unnecessarily painting that, you know, highlight and bringing it to the people and all that. So they create a lot of word around that. We will have to be really careful in analyzing that information. And as I mentioned, you know, uh, yes, you will always find some great people also following astrology. Unfortunately, what has happened is that, you know, this also goes with religion and God. So one of the strategy, I would say, of astrologers is also that intentionally they have mixed the religion and astrology and gods and astrology together, so that you don't question astrology. I think this is not true. If you ask me, there's absolutely no relation between the astrology and the religion. Religion is a completely different topic, and I really don't want to touch that. God concept is also a different topic. I really don't want to talk about it. I only want to focus on astrology because it has nothing to do with these two concepts. But those who were protectors of this phenomena, you know, they found that if we mix all these together, people will not dare to ask questions, and that is exactly they have succeeded, because nobody is asking questions today. So that was another, you know, question. And what needs to be done, I have already talked about the double blind test. uh, Many people say that, okay, you say it is not there, then, you know, in the arranged marriage system, how do we evaluate, how do we really evaluate the partners? So I would imagine, you know, these days you have to, you can frequently meet the person, and that is how you can make out what the person is. Ideally you should spend enough time so that, you know, in these circumstances how does he behave, in these circumstances how does he behave, and so on. uh, Otherwise, you know, you are always at the risk. And so I would say, rather than the charts, one should really assess the person through whichever way you can meet number of times, you can talk to the relatives around him and all that, and then that is the best way of finding out whether the match is proper or improper. There are also personality tests that we are working on. These days I also spend a lot of my time on psychology and psychology testing and all that. So there are some tests, and they will be the right choice for us to choose the partner. It has its own limitations, but we are trying to figure out whether we can give the solution. The other thing is, I think, if you see, when the person is in a financial crisis, he goes to the astrologer, and he basically wants somebody to tell him that don't worry, things will be okay. Okay, after 2 years, right now your mahadasha is this, antardasha is this. Okay, you wait for 2 years, everything will be fine. He comes back with some relief that okay, things will be fine on some day. So basically, what person is needing is the counseling. And I think we need to provide some counseling support to the people who are in the crisis. That is another good solution, if we want to really prevent people to go to the astrologers. Because the false hopes are also very, I mean, they are undesired and they can create some problems. So we don't want to give false hopes. Rather, we should teach students. Students is the right phase where we can put our teachings there. So we can teach them to think rationally and accept some part of the uncertainty of the life. Today, if you ask me why people go to the astrologers, because they are not able to bear the uncertainty in the life. Okay, if I am starting the business, I would like to know what is going to happen to my business. Will that be successful or not? But we have to accept that I will be subjected, I and my business will be subjected to certain uncertainties in the life, which I should be prepared for. Today most of us are not ready to accept that uncertainty in our life, and that is how we go to superstitions. And this is how our brains are wired. By default our brains cannot tolerate uncertainty, and this is proven. And that's why we tend to go to the either concept of God or to the superstition or to something else. As long as these things don't make any harm to us, I'm fine with that. But if they are going to create a harm to you, like in case of astrology, certainly it is a harm to you, because sometimes you will be misguided, you will take a wrong decision, you will be asked to pay for some money, exploitation, and all that. So that's why we have to fight this. That's how it is. So I think we can again take some questions. There are lots of questions here, and I'll go on reading them one by one. But in the meantime, if you want to take a question from the audience, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rajapadhya. And actually, you have mentioned two very important points about the religion mixing with the astrology, and also we should go to the proper counseling whenever we are in some problems. So now I can see Debasis and Deep. So I'll go with Debasis first. Debasis, will you ask your question?
Yeah, so my question is, are there any studies or scientific evidence that supporting the claim that the children born at the different times of the year have varying body composition of elements, which actually impacting their overall health and mental structure? Uh, I am curious because the astrologer often predicts regarding that common behavioral patterns based on this zodiac sign. So this is my question.
Yeah. So there has not been any study, and it will be very interesting study. And I tell you the reason why I did not go into that kind of study, though I will be most interested to do that. uh, because there is no objective measurement to your nature. Okay, so for example, if I say that people who are born on Aries, they have a high temper. Okay, this is how, suppose, let's say, astrology believes. Now, high temper means what? I cannot measure it objectively. So that's why, so you will do all kind of experimentation and all that, and finally you will go with some judgment of the others that okay, he is a high temperament guy. And if you prove that, then it has no meaning. For conducting the scientific experiment, what you need is objectivity. And that is exactly why what we have done in our empirical testing, because when we say mentally disabled and intelligent, there is an objectivity into that, because those people who had the mental disability, they had the medical certificate that they are mentally disabled or intelligently disabled. So we could objectively say that whatever we are proposing and whatever we are presenting, it has a scientific evidence. The problem with those scientific natures and the correlation with the zodiac sign is that, you know, there is no objective measurements. However, I did come across some studies in the Western astrology, where, you know, they took some thousands and thousands of the charts, because in their case, you know, in some countries even the time also is captured, so the data was taken, and based on some feedback whether the person is aggressive, not aggressive, some studies were done, and it was not proven, just to answer the question. But it's a very difficult study to conduct, because there is no objectivity involved in anything, number one. Number two, I tell you, these are all superficial statements that astrologers make, that person who is Virgo will be very analytical, for example, just giving an example. uh, then they will say, then we will show them, okay, but this person is not analytical. Then they will say, no, no, not only the moon sign, but the sun sign also will matter, or the ascendant sign will also matter. So again, the problem with this, you know, scientific experimentation is there is no one standard rule book that which is agreeable to all astrologers, which we can take and, you know, disprove it one by one. That is the biggest problem working with empirical testing of astrology. Each astrologer has his own, you know, own science, I would say, on own rules and all that. There is a limit to what extent we can go behind them. I think what we should do is, we should, the double blind test is the best answer to that, and also the empirical studies like this what we have done. I think if anyone wants to really conclude for his own life whether astrology is not there or not, we have enough data points on the table. If he doesn't take them despite of they being very evident, it is because of the some psychological effects. No, people who firmly believe on something, even if they will have concrete evidence against them, they don't accept it. This is again a very well-known psychological effect. Right now I'm not able to remember the term for that, but it's a well-known psychological effect. So we will have to face all those, you know, people and situations, and that's why uh, people have, that's why there's no point in conducting such experiment. But if there is a objectivity, then I think one can conduct the experiment. In this particular question that you asked, very difficult to make out the objectivity. So on both sides there is a vagueness, and on the astrologer side the rules are vague. Somebody will say moon sign, somebody will say sun sign, somebody will say no, no, not only the planet moon, but whether if the moon has a conjugation with Saturn, then some of the qualities of Saturn will get into your nature. You know, there is no end to their rules, and I mean, how many rules you will disprove them? So the best is to get the crux and say no, it doesn't exist.
Thank you, Dr. Rajopadhye. Deep has raised his hand. Deep, if you can unmute and ask the question.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Hello, sir. Thank you for your nice presentation. Being a mathematics student, I just I just curious to know that how and what statistical tools that is used. Means I have seen chi-square test in one of your slide. Just means actually how you assign those value, because by understanding the house or the lagna, means all that and all the rules and how means these are accumulated, and some statistical tools that are data set that are assigned, and
Yeah.
for the validation.
So we had taken help of one or two PhD statisticians, you know, those who did PhD in statistics. We have taken their help, and based on their advice, we used the t-test of significance, and also the chi-square testing. I think this is enough. You know, if we have if we have two sets, and if we have averages of number of rules getting complied or number of charts getting complied on each set and all that, you just need to subjected to the statistical t-testing of significance, and that will tell you, and as I mentioned, we set the thresholds of such testing to advantages to the astrologers. As I mentioned, 10% is the least that anyone will expect. Ideally, I mean, if you ask me as a layman, I would imagine that astrology with so much of hype, there has to be a substantial difference, like 80 to 20% kind of a difference between the two sets. But we had put a very reasonable thresholds. So those are the tools that we use, but we just put them into the computer so that everything can be automated. I think the more details are there in the published paper. You can
Papers, yes.
always refer to that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deep. So, sorry, Hari has actually written a question. Hari, will you come ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question to our speaker? Hari, are you there? Okay, so if not, then actually I can ask probably on behalf of you. So the question is, how does Surya Grahan affect pregnancy? That was the question, Dr. Rajopadhye.
So I think this is really not in the scope of our topic today, but still I would say, even if it is there or not, it has to be only on the basis of medical science. So I'm not the expert in medical science, so somebody who has the knowledge about how the let's say the fetus grow, and how that growth happens, and what will the impact of Surya Grahan and all that. That should be the analysis. Whatever it is, I really don't know those aspects. All that I can tell you is that from the astrological point of view, there is absolutely no impact of that particular event on any child, or anyone for that matter. Not only the child, but even people like us. Absolutely no impact from the astrology point of view, that somebody will have something unauspicious or something, that will not be there. That much only I can tell you. I'm also looking at the list of the questions. Uh, so somebody is asking the relationship between astronomy and astrology. Uh, Astronomy is purely about the planets and space. So it happened so that uh, I mean, astronomy is just regular science. Whatever it states, it has evidence. There are experiments. So all the hypotheses are proven. It's a science altogether, and astrology is just a imaginary science taking or based. It is based on planets, but the propositions and all that they are making, of course, they are not validated. Uh, how it emerged. So there was a question about how it emerged. This astrology has emerged and how it has survived for thousands of years. And people say that, sometimes they say that it's a good question, that if something has survived for 1,000 years, there must be some merit into it. So I must tell you that how it has evolved, because right from beginning, the human brains are wired such a way that we cannot tolerate uncertainty. I think I already talked about it. So we just can't tolerate uncertainty. So we always are curious about making our future predictable and certain and known and all that. So we were figuring out various means and ways to find out what is going to happen. And in that attempt, our rishis and munis, they made a very good attempt. So I have been an innovation lead. So I know that all good ideas and innovations should be encouraged. So I really respect that their attempt to find out something on the basis of planet as an attempt, I really appreciate this. And I think this was a great intelligent work that they did. Only thing what happened is that, like astrology, there were many other things. You must have seen some people will go by fingerprint, somebody will see your hand and the lines on the hands and so on. So there are a number of ways people were trying, and astrology is just one of that attempt. What happened is, let's say they observed for 20 years, 25 years, and they found some rules saying that, okay, if this planet is in this position, they must have called it a zodiac sign. And if such configuration is there, this is what happens in the life. Let's say the girl becomes widow. I mean, I'm taking example. Now, what happened after some time when they found that somebody became widow, but she did not have that configuration which they were claiming as the configuration. So they made another rule. Okay, if this is there, then also there is a possibility that the girl will become widow. And then again, after some time, they found that rule is also not being matched. They added third one, fourth one, fifth one, sixth one, and so on. So today you will find a lot of rules for the same aspect in the life and same event in the life. Say divorce, for example, there are 13, 14, 15 major rules that people will talk about what can lead to the divorce. Now, did they test all these rules together at any point of time with statistical tools and all that? The answer is no. And the answer is no because such tools were not available till last 50 years. It's only last 50 years when the computers came in, the tools have become available. But by the time this astrology has become so much a commercial, kind of a commercial kind of a venture, that nobody wants to. People, at least who are proposing it, they just don't want to go into the testing because they know it for sure that this will not get proven. And even if there are attempts to prove it, you will find some journals where you will find plenty of papers on astrology saying that it is there, but you will always find the data points very less, must be selective data. Because uh, at least in our experiment, when we took large amount of data and completely randomized data, we did not find anything that we can say there is a validity. So that is how bit of background of how it must have evolved. And again, I am telling you, we should salute those rishi munis because they try to do something innovative. It's just that the testing of this thing was not done, and unfortunately it went into the hands of those who are making misuse of it. Okay, any other question? I mean, how much time do we have? I think we have 10 more minutes, is it? Or how much time do we have?
Uh, I think we can go ahead and take two, three more questions. That will be
Okay,
fine for
okay.
us. CV, will you?
Yes. So, next question I see from Anil in the chat box. Anil, are you around? Seems he's not here. Then I'll read his question. But I have seen lot of real life examples of 7.5 years Saturn, that is Shani Dasa, affecting people, and they are going through lot of challenges. What are your view on that?
So again, I mean, it is very hard to believe that everybody will have 7.5 years of bad life throughout. Just that again, as I mentioned, it's a very psychological effect, and this happens around me, in my family and around also. So I have seen this very closely, that if somebody is having sade sati, that's 7.5 years he's talking about, the moment something happens, which is against your wishes, you will immediately correlate to the sade sati. And whenever something good happens, you will just forget about that sade sati. So this is how it is happening. So it has no meaning, absolutely no meaning, since we have already proven that the planets do not have any impact on our materialistic life. There is no reason of Mahadasha, Antardasha, Sade Sati, and all those cars and Panoti and all that to play any role in our life. And we should really be, asking for the evidence. I think the best thing is the kind of questions which are being asked here. We should really ask to the astrologers, are they answerable to this? For example, if somebody says, I mean, these are very interesting conversations I can share. So every week, as I mentioned, I talk to the couples, and on the video call, of course, they reach out to me through mail. My mailbox is full with their complaints saying our parents are not agreeing to our marriage and all that. Then I talk to their parents, and the parents sometimes ask me, "Are you ready to give the guarantee? If okay, we will go by your research, but are you ready to give us the guarantee that their marriage will survive forever?" I said, no. Do you ask such guarantee to the astrologer when you do the matchmaking? You don't, correct? So, and the thing I tell to the even pair also, saying that, guys, whether your marriage will survive or not, it all entirely depends on you. I don't know you guys. You have come to me just now. I don't know your nature. I don't know how well bonded you are. So it all depends on your relationship. All that I can give you guarantee is, if at all, if the divorce happens, it should not happen. But if it happens, it will not be because of the planets, but it will be because of you. So I think this is how our society is, and I think we need to deal with that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So I have seen Shubhajit has asked a very interesting question. Shubhajit, will you come and ask
Yeah,
to
can you
us?
hear me?
Yes.
Yes,
Sorry.
yes.
So I was asking, like, how did you, how was the classification between these disabled and intelligent people made? Like, I'm just curious. Like, I feel that I should also do that test every 5 years
Yeah.
with
So
age if my IQ is
yeah,
getting.
so I think I must give credit to the Dr. Narendra Dabolkar and his team for collecting the data, and they really took a lot of efforts. These are, I already thanked in my paper, but those volunteers, they went to the school of those schools. There are some exclusive schools for intelligently disabled students. So they went to them. They gave a kind of a appeal. Dr. Davarkar himself wrote that letter. That letter was given to the parents, and a caution was taken that this data will be used for this and this purpose. So if you are not sure of the date and time, please don't give the data. Even that also was mentioned, and with that, the data was collected. So I think that is how the data came in. Uh, and obviously in those schools the admissions are given only after medical certificate. So that is the background of those students.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. There is one question. What is Vedic in Vedic astrology?
Yeah. So again, if you go by uh, some of those rationalists, they say that the astrology has come to India from Greece. Okay, so those people came in and they brought the astrology to us. But people who belong to or who want to promote astrology, I already mentioned to you that intentionally the religion and God concept is mixed with astrology so that you don't ask the question to that. And the second thing is, so there is a claim. There is a claim from these supporters and believers that there are references of the astrology in Vedas. I really don't know because I have not read the Vedas. So that's the reason they call it as a Vedic astrology. But in my view, if you ask my personal view, it's basically to promote astrology and to create the correlation with the religion. Uh, as I mentioned, I have not read those things, so I can't comment on that. All that I say is that whatever base it may have, whatever origin it may have, I will not really question that. All that I'm going to ask and question is the outcome. If your outcome is consistent and it can be proven, I will agree to it. Whichever origin it has, I will agree to that. And unfortunately, today that is not present. Yeah.
Thank you. So the last question, probably Dr. Rajapadhyay, I'll just have for you. So recently there has been a rise of individuals in our country or the society with decorated positions who are engaged in rationalization and probably the normalization of these kind of superstitions. So, what is, in your opinion, needs to be done to counter such misinformation and its impact on the common people in our country in terms of scientific temper, especially for the young students? What do you
Yeah.
recommend
So
to?
I think correct. So I probably already answered that question. I really like that question, and that's why I noted down. So I think the double-blind experiment again and again. I'm talking about it because it's a very simple experiment for the common man to understand. This looks like a very interesting experiment that you, for example, whoever reaches out to me for career, people say, so I'm on Quora and other social medias, and I have created some exclusive spaces for people to understand about the truth of astrology. but people even don't go through all that. They just see that, something related to astrology. They will send me their chart and say, what is my career prospects and all that. So I asked them, can you just collect, you do one experiment, and this should be told to even students also, uh, that you collect the charts of the people around you, those who are in the professions, and take it to the astrologer, blind them, remove all the details, name and everything, and just ask them what is his profession. If he is able to tell with, let's say even 70% accuracy, you pay 3 times of the fee that he's asking for, and take the advice that, what should be your career. So I think these kind of experiments are required. The double blind experiment is more or less like this, that you blind all the details of the charts and take to the astrologer and ask them to predict something. This should be done at an institutional level. So right now, I am a very small fish in the ocean. I can't do it much. I do have the ideas, but I can't do it. There are some organizations which are working for the cause. I have already reached out to them, but somehow this has not come in their priority yet. But these are the right steps to take. People like Dr. Narendra Dabholkar, he is born once in hundreds of years. He has the right vision. He had the vision, and he exactly did this experiment to change the opinion of the society, because changing the opinion of the society really requires something creative and innovative, and double blind experiment exactly does that. It opens the eyes of the people, and they will also wonder, "Okay, if the astrologers are so knowledgeable, and they claim they have a science and coming from thousands of years, they will obviously think internally, why are they not able to pass the double blind test?" I think and it will be like doodh ka doodh, pani ka pani, for both sides. I think we should, as a society, should conduct such experiments. Maybe if required, we should form a panel of maybe retired judges, some astrologers, some scientists, some rationalists, everyone together on one platform. But this is the requirement of the society, that they should know objectively and scientifically what is the truth. And that can only be brought through such measures as double blind experiment, and there should be wide publicity to the outcomes. This is the only solution, in my view, to this problem.
Right. Thank you. So now with that, we are closing the question answer session, and we thank all our participants and also Dr. Rajopadhye for all the questions, the talk, and such an interactive session. With this, I now invite Dr. Sriparna Mukherjee to conclude this program. Dr. Sriparna is currently working at Netherlands Organization for Applied Scientific Research, TNO, as a scientist, and she is a member of Breakthrough Science Society Abroad chapter. Sriparna, to you.
Thank you, Ankita, and thank you, Dr. Nagesh Rajopadhye, for taking time, your valuable time for us and enlightening us about the scientific testing of astrology. It has been such an honor to be part of today's wonderful event, and I express my heartfelt thanks to each and everyone who have made this event possible. I also thank all our audience for participating in this interactive session. Astrology indeed is one of the superstitious beliefs that millions of Indians, as well as people around the world, fall victim to. And using a scientific test that Dr. Rajopadhye has clearly demonstrated that it is not at all a science, but rather a pseudoscience, a superstitious belief. Taking advantage of the lack of the scientific bent of mind in people, almost all newsprint and electronic media, as even Dr. Rajopadhye has also told, and even the individuals holding government positions are continuously spreading astrology among the common people in India. Beyond that, countless superstitious and mythological beliefs are being propagated in the name of Indian knowledge systems and by changing the syllabus of our school education. In this situation, we, on behalf of Breakthrough Science Society and India March for Science, we have been carrying out various activities to counter these unscientific and pseudoscience forces and help develop movements to strengthen the fabric of scientific temperament in our society. And today's webinar is one such activity. I shall appeal to all our audience to become a part of our ongoing efforts to save science, education, research, and scientific temperament in Indian society by becoming a part of India March for Science and Breakthrough Science Society. Once again, on behalf of the India March for Science Abroad chapter and the Breakthrough Science Society Abroad chapter, I thank our speaker, Dr. Nagesh Rajopadhye, our audience, and all our organizers for making this discussion successful. Herewith, we conclude our program, and a very good night to all of you. We look forward to meeting you once again in our next webinar sessions and next events. Thank you all.